Hello, my name is Hans-Martin Buff. I'm currently traveling on Scorpions Business, who are about to release a tour edition of their album Return to Forever. And they're going to include a show they played in Brooklyn, New York last August. That's August of 2015. And I've mixed it, and I'm going to put finishing touches on it. The way I work these days is this here is the center of my music factory. Sometimes I work with clients that I never meet personally, which is kind of a shame, but that's just the way things work these days. With the Scorpions, what happens a lot is when I mix a live show for them, I start this at my house. I get a hard drive full of material and I start working on it in my little workspace that I have at my house or wherever I am. It is really not important these days where I'm located right now. I'm in a hotel room, about to spend some time here for a different assignment. And later, ideally, I meet up with the artists, play for them what I did, do changes, make adjustments, and bounce it again within my computer. What I use to work and to mix is basically this laptop and Pro Tools. There is a collection of plugins that I use, some Avid, lots of others as well. And at my house I also have an artist mix, which is a little Avid controller, which I find very important to get a basic idea of what a mix is about, to set up a basic balance, to be able to quickly try out different constellations of things, which you just can't do by doing click, shift, click, shift, click, shift. What I also have, which is very important for the workflow, is an HD Thunderbolt box, which means even if I go into studios, my laptop can still be the center of my creative universe because I can hook it up to the Avid infrastructure of the studio and keep working from where I left off at my house. I'm currently I'm playing you a little song which you probably know, which is a classic of Scorpions lore, one of the many hits they've had. And this is a song called No One Like You. I'll just play it for you real quick. It's actually a special performance this time around because it's not only played by the Scorpions themselves, but by a little guitar helper named Brandon, who's from Brooklyn, New York, and is 12 years old. And he got to play lead guitar with the Scorpions. So the song goes like this. I'll just skip to a chorus so you remember it. Wasn't easy, the choice I would say. Oh, give it to me, Brooklyn, come on! I can't wait for the night with you. Just imagine the thing we do. I just want to be loved. So the way I approach a live mix is at first completely different from how I would approach a regular studio mix, because it's a lot about cleaning stuff up. In a live situation, obviously you don't have the separation of sounds that you do have in a proper studio, and there's a lot of crosstalk. So you can't use the overheads of the drums like you would in a studio situation. There are things like, for example, the singer going, "There's no one like you," and then putting the microphone to the right, and all of a sudden you have a huge blast of cymbal noise in the singer's microphone, which will be a problem later on when I try to apply compression, equalization, whatever I want to do to make it sound good to the vocal. Because if I wouldn't clean that up, the cymbal would explode in the moments where the singer isn't singing. So what I really do when I have a whole show like this, which is about close to a 2-hour show, is I start cleaning up the individual tracks. So I actually go through the tracks, not that much with kick and snare, but for example with the tom-toms, which is, as you can see here, for example, I just use a little bit of them. Just play a bit of it. So I only have them when I really need them. I also go through the actual vocals and listen to each individual part, where it starts, where it stops, and I cut out the little bits in between. See if I can still find that for you. It's a big session with a lot of things. So in the end, what you actually hear is this.
But you long for a man who needs love. I miss you since I've been away.
So you hear that you're not hearing anything in between his vocal lines. Once I've cleaned the mix, it is like any other mix really, with one exception. It is like any other mix in the way that every sound is supposed to sound good, that the balance between the individual parts is supposed to be right, and that I'm supposed to hear everything that is happening. For example, when there's a little lick on the guitar, it shouldn't be lost in the mix. The Scorpions are a band that have a strong division between a rhythm guitar player and a lead guitar player, and when the lead guitar player is doing his little ba-bas, then I want to hear him. I'll pull him up in the mix. That's very important. The one thing that isn't like a regular studio mix is that you need to have, when you listen to a concert recording and also see it on a screen, which is the case here, you need to have an idea of the space and the excitement of the room. So if I were to take off the reverb of the vocal, for example, sounds like this.
But you long for a man who needs love. I miss you since I've been away.
There isn't much there. So if I turn it back on.
But you long for a man who needs love.
You notice I've chosen some reverbs that approximate the size of the room that they're in. I'm comparing actually the sounds of the audience recordings that I got, which aren't unfortunately very many, but I can play those for you too if you like. Let's see here. This is the audience. These are the two audience mics at this spot. So I'm trying to find a reverb that kind of approximates that. What I also do, and this is my little bit of cheating with it, is I'm adding a bit of excitement because, you know, for example, at the end when there's a huge applause, this is actually the applause I got. That isn't bad, but it captures the people that stand around the front of house desk or are right in front of the stage. So I just add a little bit of extra applause to it. Sounds like this. This is the extra applause I've added. I'll play this the same spot with that applause and without. This is without. Isn't bad, you know, but this actually captures the excitement that you could hear if you were an audience member during the show, which is the point of this. I think the point of releasing a DVD of a concert recording or a CD or any format of a concert recording is to enable you to be part of it. So you need to feel the excitement, otherwise you could just listen to the record. There's a hell of a lot of inputs at a Scorpion show. I think it's around 60 something. I could look at it. And I get every last input that the front of house mixer got. Actually even one more, especially like with Brandon here. I got an extra recording, which I'm not sure if he had it. Brandon is the extra guitar player that played on No One Like You here. So I get every track that the front of house guy got. I do approach it somewhat differently because I think for me, the main difference between a studio recording and a concert recording in terms of drums is how I can use the overheads. When I record drums myself, or when I mix a well-recorded studio recording, I usually can use the overheads of the room recordings as the basis for the sound. So I can have like a couple of stereo sources that kind of define what the drums should sound like, and then I can define the direct signals to match that sound. This is not the case here. I have some okay recorded direct sounds with a lot of bleed, and the overheads are just really good for the cymbals because I have a ton of crosstalk on them. They don't have a lot of mids usually. You just get a lot of and that's all you get. So I need to find a way to make the drum kit bigger without the help of room sounds or overhead sounds. And I do use, more than I usually would, triggers. Let's look at the kick here, for example. I got two microphones from the actual recording, sound like this, which aren't bad, but I wanted a bit more definition. I also wanted to carry over some of the sound that the Scorpions have in the studio, so I added two samples that I triggered. This one and that one. So you see one has this rocky attack punch, and the other one has a bit more mid, which is what I was missing on the original track. So together they sound like this now. And from then on, I process them like I would any other mix. I use a lot of subgroups, so you can see here that I'm sending all the kicks together to a kick bus, which then goes to a drum bus, which is here, which then goes to an instrument bus. So all the instruments in the end are being compressed a bit together, so I can add the vocals on top and have more space and more creative freedom to place them however I want, no matter how much I've processed, compressed, EQ'd the rest of the instruments. And maybe you can see here that whatever reverbs I've used on the snare mostly are also going through the main bus for the drums. So I also try to have the stems separately, there are two reasons for this. Number one, I feel like if you are part of an instrument group and I'm processing that instrument group, you should be part of the processing. That includes reverbs. That's number one. Number two, sometimes with these live projects, I'm asked to do a 5.1 mix. In my experience, a 5.1 mix, especially of a live situation, is not a separate mix. You make a good stereo mix and then you place it in the room. So on top of feeling the excitement in the stereo way, you're actually in the audience. So the way I do this is I make this really easy on myself. Once I've completed the stereo mix, I create stems of the individual parts, which I then place in the 5.1 environment. Certain tracks I leave as they are, like the audience mics, for example, so I can really place them around me rather than in front of me. But most of the things work just as stereo stems. So putting every instrument group through a subgroup also serves the purpose of preparing for that 5.1 mix. When I get guitar or vocal recordings from the Scorpions, concert recordings, they're good quality, and I have a lot of options. So with guitars, I usually get two dry tracks, which are actually amp tracks only without the effects, and then I get a separate effect track with all the treatments that they usually use in the show, from delays over choruses, phasers, whatever it is. And I use a combination of these things. The effects are so good that usually I don't have to use anything else. I sometimes add a little bit to the lead guitar just to make it stand out some more. Add a little bit of room, a little bit of stereo delay. With the vocals, I get the sound how it comes out of the microphone itself. And I also get a treated signal, how Klaus hears it in his headphones. And I get a spare mic that's always there just in case one of the mics cacks on stage, so he would flip over to it. I usually take the direct signal as it comes out of the microphone. Why? Because the treated signal is already very, very compressed, and it's not as easy to clean up, which is, in my mind, really, really important to the vocal. And then I do what I always do, is I use the Pro Tools plugin to find the spots I don't like. This to me is just a surgical tool. So as you can see, there's no wide bump or dip somewhere. It's just, I'm taking some of the audience rumble off, and I found some low mid and some biting part that I didn't like, that I got rid of. And then what I do is I limit it ever so slightly. If you, let me just go to a vocal spot. There's nothing happening, so just in the very, very loud spots, you'd hear a little bit of limiting, because I always feel like a little bit of limiting brings the vocal forward a bit. In this case, I worked some more on the high end with multiband compression, and then added some treble. These types of plugins is what I use to really add flavor to a sound. And then, because sometimes I use automation even on a live vocal, I always feel like if I put something behind it, behind the automation, it can catch it through compression or whatever processing is being added. So even when it's a single vocal, I add it to a single bus, which you can see here. I add even a little more EQ, and then I even sometimes use these one-size-fit-all plugins, slightly change to my liking. This is a preset I've set up during another mix session. And then I change it a bit and put another one behind it, just to add a bit of harmonizer in this case. And compress the whole thing. You know, I don't do a lot of, this seems like a lot of processing, and it is, but it's very gentle. Neither one of these plugins has a 20 dB compression action going for itself. It's just always take what you have before and make it more compact, so it really jumps at you in the final mix, which it does, I feel, in the end. I do a lot of pulling sounds together along the way. I'm not somebody who puts a heavy-duty, hard-working compressor on the whole thing and lets that take the whole mix into one spot. I'm trying to take the individual parts little by little together without killing them, without ruining their, I wouldn't say dynamic range, but their attack, their greatness, their bigness. So when you look at this, for example, I take the two dry guitar tracks by Matthias, which go through a bus, and that bus then is being compressed. That bus again goes to another bus, which is all the Matthias guitars. Matthias is the lead guitarist of the Scorpions. And also the effects channel of Matthias goes through that subgroup, which again is compressed. Now if you look at this, not much is happening at this point. It's just, once again, a limiter, a little bit of compression, because it's already very compressed, but it just adds a bit of tightness to it. And then the output of that bus goes to a bus that's all guitars, which combines the other guitarist, Rudolph's guitar, and his guitar in one bus, which is somewhere, which is the Guitar Master here, which is even a bit limited because it makes it a bit more punchy. But you can see very little is happening, but you would hear it if I took it out. It's just little steps here and there, adding. Again, then this guitar thing is not going to another bus. This is going to the main output. And then on the main output, on the master track, I do have a bunch of things. In this case, I have this whole rack. Once again, not doing very much, but doing a little. And this particular plugin, the Slate plugin, is adding some high-end bite to it. That's why I use it. I like to use it. Then I have a master compressor. You see it barely moving again because I took it together before. I don't need to do this anymore. There are no escape activities of any of the instruments. They already are in their space. And then I make it louder. And louder. because loud feels good. Loudness war, they're back. People like things that jump at them. And in the end, if you look at this, you've seen all the compression that happened, which wasn't very much, even at the end there. And this is the result. You see? The loudness vibe, the felt loudness matches closely the actual loudness, which I think is an important thing. This song, No One Like You, was kind of special because they had a guest guitarist who's 12 years old. And in my mix, I could actually for once improve the front of house mix, because usually the front of house guy, of course, knows the song, knows what's going to happen where, but they don't know that with a new guitarist who plays for the first time on the song. Here's a spot where Brandon is actually playing a little lick. And this time I'll play you the original front of house mix as it came out of the board. So this is not a finished mix, but you won't hear when he's playing a little lick. Did you hear that lick? No, because the front of house guy didn't know that it was going to be there. So I made sure that all his licks would be audible. See? It's not like super loud, but it's there. So that's one of the things I always do, is I make sure that everything I see is also audible. That's very, very important in a live mix for a video. And I do compare the feel of my mix to the original mix, if there's been a board mix, if there's been a live stream mix, or whatever it is. Because, you know, they tend to have more energy because people are in the moment, they're excited when they make that mix. It's loud, there's a lot of low end, there's usually more than in a proper mix or mid-range. So I compare it. Also, when I don't know a song, I listen to the studio versions. And pick out the parts that are special about the mix there. Is there a reverb opening here? Are the background vocals more important than usual? Is there a specific sound on the snare? Whatever it is. For example, there's a song by the Scorpions called Is There Anybody There?, which has a lot of backward snare on it. And then I try to incorporate that subtly into my live mix. I also talk to the front of house mixer and ask him for his specialties when he says, okay, on this song I use this delay on that and do this and that, and I try to recreate that to keep the feel of the live recording. It's wonderful that I can also fix a little bit, even when I have a finished live recording and I have the video, so I can't, I can't change anything like I could in a studio recording where nobody knows, is this the actual singer, is it something else? And I do very subtle updates, which I do with Melodyne, with the occasional copy-paste thing if the bass player hit the wrong note here, but not in the chorus before, so I certainly do that. But I don't do widely distorting things when I try to fix little boo-boos that are in every live performance, because you can only do it once. I started working in recording studios in 1993, which is a long time ago. And the first really big session I worked on was as an assistant on a session by a band named Live. And they had a very successful album called Throwing Copper, and I got to work on the recording of this. The producer was a famous guy named Jerry Harrison, and he showed up in his Saab convertible, and on the back seat he had two huge boxes, which were the first Pro Tools system I ever saw. And we used it to great effect, not to record because the times weren't ready for that, but to do actually arrangement work, to extend intros, to fly things from here to there, and to also clean stuff, take buzz off guitar tracks and such. And since then, Pro Tools has been the program that's followed me through every studio I've been in. I've introduced it to Paisley Park Studios. I don't know if they're still using it there. And since I'm a man who works mainly with audio stuff, I haven't found a better program, and that's why I use it. When I started in my business, most major studios had SSL consoles. Why? Because they were interchangeable. You could go from Studio A to Studio B and just start working. And that's one of the things I love about Pro Tools. In many other programs, which I won't mention, it is really, really hard to go from one hardware to another, whereas in my program, I can take the center of my workflow and use it everywhere. Especially now that I have an HD Thunderbolt box, which I can hook up to any Avid interface on the planet and use my laptop as the center of my work activity. So I'm used to it, I'm really good at it, I think, and it's never let me down when it comes to sound, which is the most important thing. Pro Tools is the road I'm walking on, and it's going everywhere with me. Come on in to Scorpio Studios. We just arrived, so I'm gonna hook up my Thunderbolt. I'm connecting my computer to a Thunderbolt hub, which is then connected to my HD Thunderbolt box. So session's opening. While this is happening, I'll just show you the machine room. So this is what we're working with here. A rack of nice HD X interfaces. So now that I have connected the HD Thunderbolt box to the studio interfaces, I have all the ins and outputs that the studio has to offer. And we're working with an SSL duality here. So now I just have to hook it up to the SSL's protocol, and then the board will be my controller at the same time. So that's what we're going to do. So, the customers are here. Let's let them in.
Can't wait.
So, this is the Brooklyn show, right?
This is the Brooklyn show, and with your guest guitarist. And I took some care that, you know, him and Matthias don't interfere, but we hear the little licks he's playing when he's on his own, so...
Okay.
Yeah, cool. Sounds great.
Yeah, it's crazy. So you can, you know, I started in the laptop, but I still have all the sound qualities that a great studio like this one can provide with the interfaces and the technical stuff, just by hooking it up.
Oh, that's
in
amazing.
this little box.
Because in the old days, when you think you had to hire the Rolling Stone mobile,
Right.
something.
How long did you
packed
mix?
with equipment, and
Don't
that's
think
amazing.
so far. Well, I don't think all the songs. We had the same situation. A few times.
South of France.
Yeah, South of
Yeah.
France.
Blackout album was
Yeah.
also recorded in
Wow.
a mobile truck.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In Grasse Saint-Jacques near Cannes.
That must have been hard.
But it was cool, you know, to pick a nice place, a nice location, and prepare the whole building where you have the best sound for everything, and you had the best vibe, and you stayed there. The whole band lived there,
Wow.
you know, and I think it was cool, like since like band like the Stones and other bands at the time they're working with those mobiles,
Right.
you know, to go to some place and leave the regular studio setup behind and go somewhere else, like going south of France or someplace. And that was, it had a vibe, you know, and it was definitely adding to the whole inspiration, you know, and writing new songs and stuff. The whole thing was just very attractive. But when you think today you come up with a little piece like this, you know.
I mean,
the recording would be still the same, I
Yeah.
think,
Yeah.
but you could probably mix it while we are sleeping, you know, in one of
Which I
the
did.
rooms of the hotel.
Yes, yes.
No, but you know what I
Yeah,
mean. This would be
absolutely.
possible today, on the way home.
You probably mixed Worldwide Live and your live albums in big studios over a long period of time.
Yes.
Yeah, we mixed
Right.
them in the Dirk Studios.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Also,
see.
Yeah.
So you still you can take more. You have more possibilities, and you can do it wherever. you know. I love it.
That's
I really do.
Pretty amazing.
And it's good for me too, because, you know, people who aren't as resourceful as you can let me mix in the laptop, and we just go to a nice studio to finish it off for like 2-3 days,
and
rather than for 3
we
weeks.
would make the decision pretty much the last minute, saying, it would be so cool if we had a recording of this show.
Right.
You know, so it's just a phone call and you...
Right. I love it.
Pack
And thanks for calling. Are you happy?
So,
Cool?
Yeah,
very much.
Sounds great.
Sounds
Glad.
fantastic.
Yeah,
Cool.
nice balance. Good sound.
Thank you.
If you want to win this CD and watch the concert, then just sign up.